If we look at system vulnerabilities and threats and risks, if we look at that, is that how can we move ourselves into a position where we are less vulnerable and we're able to respond to threats, or we are able to prevent threats and we're able to respond and reduce risks? How do we really do that, Bob? What's really the key to doing that?
Well, from my perspective, the real key is knowing your supply chain, not only condition, but origin and the purity of your supply chain components, particularly in today's very sophisticated systems. You need to know where your parts came from. You need to know what your alternatives for production are. You can't be so reliant on sole source. There has to be a real-time status, an MRO. It can't be historical based, it can't be responding to failures. It has to be well out in front of that kind of thought.
Manoj, how in the world do we understand all the real-time parameters and respond to those to be able to provide logistics that meet the needs of the defense mission?
Yeah. So I think one thing is very important, that be able to, because nowadays, whether you're talking about the 5th generation aircraft or even 4th generation aircraft, right, fighter jets, the amount of different data and parameters and sensors that are attached to it that create all these data that gets captured. The ability to capture that data real time as the flight is happening, or pre or post the mission, right? And then be able to tie those to the readiness of those aircraft, both from the maintenance as well as from the parts availability perspective, is very critical, because it's not about just flying hours and cycles. There are innumerable parameters that have to be captured, and it's not just about the capturing the parameter at the very front end itself. It's also about managing them and creating new parameters out of those that have impact on the maintenance. That is where the software like Ramco comes in. You can create a lot of business rules and logic to give you a prediction of if a particular fighter jet has certain parameter that is captured in the field. What does that mean for a critical component in the supply chain? Right, tying all the way from that parameter to the parts requirement, and depending upon the frequency of those occurrences, you can try to position those parts either in the field, in the retail warehouses versus the central warehouses. All the decisions can be made, and that goes back to how quickly you can respond back to the need as and when those specific missions are happening.
Yeah. Hey, Bob, you told me that resilient or responsive logistics systems are critical to success. Tell me, why is that an important aspect of successful logistics and deployment?
Well, what it boils down to is the availability of your operational systems. If you don't have a resilient force and resilient supply chain ready to respond at what you referred to, and I've heard the speed of need today is much more rapid. As Manoj said, the number of parameters, though, that are available today, the data that's available today, gives us a much better chance at maintaining that operational capability. And then we can schedule our maintenance efforts. We can schedule our major depot level maintenance based on the condition, the real world, real time condition, and the operational tempo we face. Our operational tempo has to be scalable from very low scale to very high scale on a moment's notice. To do that, you must have total visibility through your supply chain. You must, to understand the consequences of failure at any one of those points.
So, Manoj, how do IT systems such as what Ramco provides provide that kind of a responsiveness and reliability and resilience? How do you provide a system solution? What are the key aspects that respond to that kind of a need?
Yeah. So I think, like Bob was saying earlier, one of the aspects of responsiveness is what is the nature of mission that is being carried out, right? And that nature of mission can vary quite a bit in a very short period of time. Sometimes you are using the aircraft for rescue missions. Sometimes you're using it for reconnaissance. Sometimes you are using them for actual attack and fighting, right? So depending upon that, the configuration of the aircraft changes, sometimes minor, sometimes majorly, right? And you got to be prepared starting from your systems, IT systems perspective, to be able to make those changes to configurations in a very quick manner that then can drive the modification changes needs for the mechanics or the technicians to be able to do it on the ground. You don't want to wait for days, but rather you should be able to do those things in hours. And that's where, capabilities within our software, where we have template configurations, what we call it. So we have hierarchy of configurations. So for the same aircraft, you can have 4 or 5 different configurations that you can define in the systems. And with a click of a button, you can change it from reconnaissance to the fighting missions, and then be able to drive those changes and have the aircraft be available within a short span of time.
Okay, so what you're telling me is it comes back to understanding the needs of the mission, and then good design of the systems and solutions, as well as architecture and implementation to be able to respond to that. I think that's what I hear you saying.
That's exactly what I'm saying. So you need to be able to understand, okay, so if I have these model of aircraft in the field for this set of missions, what are the different 5 or 6 different types of missions that these aircraft are supposed to be carrying out in, let's say, in a given span of 1 month, right? And have all those configurations tied to those missions be defined in the systems, and be able to change those and drive those changes in the aircraft to be able to carry out those missions. And
Okay.
a system like Ramco enables that kind of feature. Yeah.
Excellent. I can see that. Hey, Bob, what role or what importance role does the availability of information to be able to make management decisions, in real time? So analytics, and information being provided to you, what role does that play in being able to make good decisions in real time?
Well, it keeps you out in front instead of following behind. And like Manoj was saying, there are so many parameters available today that can go into your decision making. The decision maker who has the best command of those information sources is the one that's going to make the best decision. Most of our systems, particularly in something the size of the United States Navy or the United States military, many of these supply chain management systems today were really constructed years ago and been modified and modified and modified as the technology advanced. If you look at some of the Ramco products now, they are state-of-the-art based, not state-of-the-art adjusted. So the visibility, the ability to take in more parameters with better clarity exists today. So it's time to match the speed of need of the future with the capabilities, the technical capabilities that we have today. And it's all about better decision making.
Yeah, and just to kind of add to that, Mark, I think, goes back to the point that I was making earlier. How integrated a system that you have. Do you have your operations systems tied to your maintenance systems, sustainment systems? Are they tied to the integrated logistics systems, procurement, finance, accounting, where the costs are captured? Because you want to have a very high level of mission readiness, which is tied to your operations, but at a reasonable cost. That's also important, right? So, and that's where all the supply chain cost, your maintenance cost, that got tied up and then shown up in your accounting system. So I think having an integrated software where you can look at a broader picture of what is your mission readiness, right, at a very deeper level, by model, by aircraft, by missions, and then we also be able to see what is the cost of having that mission readiness through the overall supply chain and maintenance of those aircraft, right? So I think having that integrated system provides you the ability to have that dashboard where you can see both the mission and the cost of it.
Yeah, okay. I can see how a lot of these things are coming together. I hear the two of you saying I hear the two of you saying planning and readiness, those things come, closely together. I hear you saying that, data management and execution and responsiveness and resilience, enable successful execution, all wrapped together and having successful logistics all the way along the way from the planning to the execution phase. I see you all talking about, those aspects, all done in a secure system, which is done in modern day technology and is integrated. So I guess that's a wrap.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And another trend that I'm seeing, Mark, just kind of throw it out there along the same lines, right? In the past, I think DoD has taken the approach of letting some of the prime contractors or CLS contractors make the determination on what systems that they want to bring for certain work that they do from the sustainment perspective or depot management or maintenance perspective, right? But I think at the end of the day, these prime contractors are good in what they do, whether they are doing depot maintenance or aircraft manufacturer, sustainment provider, they are not a software company. So I think that distinction has to be made in terms of what are they good at, and then be able to bring, and when they actually do this, kind of take that approach, every prime contractor brought their own software, either homegrown or some external third party. And that's where gradually over a period of time, all these silos got created, right? Whereas what I'm seeing as in more and more solicitation that I'm seeing from the DoD coming out, now they're taking a look at it slightly more holistically, where they are actually saying that we're going to make a decision on the overall architecture and the IT systems, taking into account multiple different similar programs which might be out there, and hence be able to get a software provider that can cut across these multiple programs. And by the way, Mr. Prime Contractor, you can focus on your core strength of let's say the sustainment provider for the aircraft. I think that tries to cut that silos mentality or the approach that had been existing in the past.
Yeah, I clearly have seen that disparate, disconnected systems, okay, make it difficult for us to be able to, gather data, exchange, integrate, and provide the information necessary, for guys like Bob to be able to respond, real time in operations. No question.